Okay, well, again, thank you so much for joining our November 2023 meetup for the Vancouver Office 365 user group. My name is Miguel Tena. I'm part of the board of directors for the group. Today, I also have Mostafa and Arash joining us as part of the board. And we hope this event is super exciting for you. We get a few interesting surprises with Torren, and we'll talk a little bit more about the group first, and then we'll pass on the baton to Torren for his session today. So for agenda, as I mentioned, I have a couple announcements. Then we'll move on to job openings, our main presentation. We'll maybe open the floor to next month. We haven't had a chance to talk too much about that, but we'll talk about our intent, and hopefully we can make that happen for the next month. Saying Gravity Union as a sponsor because basically it's working time for me, and I'm taking time out of that to be with you today. I'm sure Arash and Mostafa also are taking time out of work for the same, so I don't want to dismiss that effort. So I'll say that we are indeed looking for more sponsors. Our coffers are running a little bit light, and for us to continue working, the group will need a bit of a cash flow injection in the near future. Just mainly to maintain things like our Office 365 subscription. I think we also pay for Meetup, and pretty much that's about it. We run things pretty lean. Of course, if we have an event, we want to get things like pizza and all of that good stuff for the group. So if you know or have any ideas for sponsors, please feel free to reach out. In terms of announcements, I don't necessarily have too many board or Vancouver user group related announcements. We'll talk about the next month event, but for things on the radar, of course, the M365 conference in Orlando in April, bit of a big one for us in the space. The fact that it's Orlando, sure, it's far, but maybe worth it if you want to brave out the flight. If you don't and you would like to stay dry, you can maybe opt for Community Day Phoenix coming up in January. It's a hybrid event as well, so if you want to do it from the comfort of your own home, that's also good. Another one that I flagged because of closeness is the Calgary Microsoft Community Day. This is in February 24. It's an in-person event, but I mean, it's a hub for us, and it might be worth just make a nice weekend trip out of it. There's a lot more events, of course. If you go to communitydays.org, like you take your pick, like Helsinki to Washington DC, any place for sure, both online and in person. Job openings. I know of Gravity Union. We have two. We're looking for a business development coordinator. This will be more so focused on I would say, the sales side of the house. So we're looking for someone there to help with our efforts around. We do a lot of RFPs, sales demos, estimations, all of that good stuff. So if someone is interested in that position, please reach out to us or go directly to the Gravity Union website. There's all the information around job descriptions and details. The other one that may be a little bit more applicable to our group is the Microsoft 365 SharePoint Analyst. We are indeed looking for more people. There's definitely quite a bit of work to share with others at this time. So if you want us to feature you in the next event for job postings, please, you can also contact us at panel365.com. For this month's presentation, we have Torren Manson. Torren is a Teams MVP based out of Kamloops, BC. How long have you been in Kamloops, Torren?
8 years.
8 years. Wow, that's quite a bit.
It's been a while, yeah.
All right. So yeah, it's closed for sure. So Torren can also join us in a few in-person events, of course. But I'm glad we have Torren today. He will be talking about Teams channels and what basically when to use what. So looking forward to that. For next month, our intent is to have an in-person event. In the before times, we used to have in-person event at Harbor Center. We'd have maybe a couple sessions and have a recap of the year and maybe a look ahead. A small group of people doing a discussion and a Q&A from the audience regarding what's what 2023 had in store for us and what's in store for 2024. If we are holding that event, and by if I mean if we have secured a venue in the next couple of weeks, we will certainly let everyone know. We want to make sure we're also not intruding with holiday plans, so we want to make sure we do this before like the 22nd. What was our tentative date, Mustafa?
Sorry, for December
Yeah,
14, December 14,
December 14. That's a
Yeah,
Thursday, right?
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah, because we don't like Fridays. It's too much
that's
traffic.
true.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. So yeah, that's the intent. Please keep an eye on your email from the user group. I'll just stop talking now and I'll pass the baton over to Torren for his presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am going to skip the whole camera on because right now I'm getting a really awesome reflection off of my glasses, which you kind of like the cat with laser eyes. So I will PowerPoint you for a while here, and then we'll tempt the demo gods, and we'll flip into some live demos. Just much more exciting than PowerPoint. All right, so we'll talk a bit about teams and channels. The different types of teams are standard, private, and shared, and we throw in this guest access thing to them as well. We'll talk about the policies, the what, and the when behind that, and give you some guidance on when you would want to pick one of the channel types versus another. So me, been doing Teams, Skype for Business, Link, Office Communication Server, Live Communication Server since about 2003 or so. Also dabble in Fortinet stuff and security. Teams and everything, Microsoft, I think, have so much to do with security these days that if you ignore the security or you're not into those security aspects that are there, you're really missing a huge component of what's going on. So sharing is caring. Why do we want to do teams and channels? So Teams to me is to facilitate modern work, and I'm putting little bunny rabbit ears with my fingers in the air around that, especially collaboration. So collaboration is that chats about a document or a meeting and working with other people, especially when we are remote and hybrid. That can be synchronous at the same time. It can be asynchronous with colleagues who are not presently available or in a different time zone. It can be remote, it can be in person, it can be hybrid, and whatever device you're on. So we've got file sharing and chat that are a significant part of that. And we've kind of replaced, through history, the interoffice memo and mail. You write your little interoffice memo and stick it in the little manila folder and wind the string around those two red circles there and right where it was supposed to go, and off it goes. And maybe the next day it's arrived at its destination. Fax is an abomination that needs to finish dying. Email is still there. This is kind of the universal method for sharing just about anything. Public folders are still there, but are horrible for a good number of reasons for sharing things. We've got a shared network drive. Hopefully, most of you have put the days of care and feeding of on-premises servers behind you. We've got SharePoint, OneDrive, Dropbox, Link and Skype for Business would allow you to send a file back and forth, but not really manage the files and work with the files together. And now finally, we've got Teams. So some things to think about when we're trying to share and collaborate. The first one, I think, is not how easy is it to use, but how easy is it to screw up? I would rather have something that's more difficult for a user to use, so long as it's also more difficult for them to actually mess something up. If we make things too simple, we make them harder. How many of you have seen file names? Final customer proposal, V3, Monday, TCM2. Yuck, like how do we avoid that? And 27 different versions of the same file going back and forth in an email. And rather than avoid it, how do we actually fix it? Because people are doing that because they don't have a better tool. They're not doing it out of spite. Okay, I've got one colleague who does it because he's an old stick in the mud and he's not here, so I can say bad things about him. But he'll still do things like that, even though we've got other options available to us. It takes a bit of a leap of faith to get into OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams files and the version control and the filtering that's available in there. But it is a really great fix for this document kind of spawning 27 different versions with all these different file names in it. And then finally, what governance and controls do we have available around that? So time to taunt the demo gods here. All right, and hide a couple more of these. So I've got up here on the screen two Teams clients. They're blue. They're both from the bump in the net tenant that I have. And if you've heard me speak before and seen any of my lab stuff, you'll know that I like Battlestar Galactica. So on the right, we have Racetrack, and on the left, we have Hot Dog. And so the first spot where we have any kind of interaction between the two is we've got just chat, the two-party chat or multi-party chat if you. Thank you, Microsoft. Between these two parties. So a bit of pilot to pilot content going on here, and we can even throw emojis and all that fun stuff in there as well. So this is cool. These are two users in the same organization chatting back and forth. We can chat with people outside of our organization as well. That's called Federation. And we can have any number of participants in here. Cool trick for those of you who haven't discovered this yet. When you start a new chat, you get to put in the people that you want to have the chat with. And then you also get an opportunity, and it's gonna let me do it here, to put a group name in. If you put a group name in, this is like a title for your thread, and this would allow me to have multiple chats on the go. I'm gonna remove Torren out of here. I'm gonna call this group name chat 2, hat 2, right on. All right, it wants me to add at least 2 people. Cool. So I've added those people, and we see it pops up here in a different area rather than just adding Torren into this chat here. It's the silliest little way, but I've got a lot of chats on the go with my boss and a project manager, and it might be, a couple of different topics in there. And it's really frustrating when we wind up having these 2 or 3 or 4 threads all in the same chat window. So there's a tip for you: dig through, give those titles to your chats, and that lets you have your multiple conversations with those same people. All right, so the next thing that we want to hop into then, past chats, is our teams and our channels. So Hot Dog has created 2 teams here. He's created one spacecraft, and we've got the general channel that's always present. We've got one titled Raptors, one titled Vipers. We've got another team here called Pilot Things. We've got a channel called No Racetrack Allowed. And then we've got another one called Non-Pilot Things. So you'll see some icons beside some of these. If there's no icon beside it, it's just a standard channel. If there's the little lock beside it, that indicates that it's a private channel. And if there's the little S squiggly thing here, I'm not even sure what that's meant to be. That's indicating that that is a shared channel. So we'll go through those and explain them here. So let's bring Racetrack over to her view on things as well. So these users are both, oh, that's going to confuse the heck out of me with them being in different orders. There we go. Okay, so these users are both in the same organization, and they are both members of the spacecraft and the Pilot Things teams. So we can come in here to one of these general channels. We can start a post. There's your classic hi everyone that everyone despises seeing. And you'll note that over on the right for Racetrack, we don't actually have that general channel. So what's going on here? It turns out that Racetrack isn't a member of this team, but is a member of this shared channel. So internally, we've used this shared channel to get a really granular level of control between our conversations. So I can come in here to Raptors. Another very meaningful post. And we see that now over on Racetrack side. Popping back out here. So we've got an interesting scenario where we've got 3 channels here under this team for the creator of those channels. And then he's gone and he's invited someone into just one channel. And remember, these people are in the same organization. So this gives us a really interesting level of control versus just our standard channel. And I like that because at the team level, if we add users in here, there's no granularity. It's the team level that defines our membership. So we wind up seeing everything under that team. And we threw in this exception with the private channel with the lock. That's it's like a no access or a block in your NTFS permissions. It's saying, yep, everybody in except, well, hang on, I'm only going to let these certain people from this team in here. So in this case, I've got Pilot Things, and let's have a look at the group membership here. Stretch that out a bit. So we've got Hot Dog is in there, I'm in there, and Racetrack is in there. So all 3 of us are members of this team, and yet over here when we look at Racetrack, we see that Racetrack doesn't have the no Racetrack allowed, and that's because we've created this specific channel type of private to block someone or to allow only other people in. So that's cool. And the main difference that we've got here is the private pulls its membership from the team and then filters it down, where shared doesn't have that restriction. Shared can be absolutely anybody. It can be from the same organization. It can be from a different organization. So here is, find the window and bring it over. This is my, sorry, I didn't want to bring that one over. I wanted to bring this other one over. The wonders of live demos. So this is my Torren at skybridgetech.com account. So you can see here, I've also got Pilot Things, but I see underneath that it came from Bump in the Net. So that's my first clue that this is not one of my teams or channels. It's external. And I see as well non-Pilot Things, also with the key in there that it's external and the shared symbol. So it looks almost the same as this with a few less channels in it. This isn't from my organization. This is from Hot Dog's organization, the screen here on the left. So we can see here the exact same conversation and view, even though I am in a different tenant. It's the, oh, and there's another, this channel is shared with members and other orgs. There's yet another reminder that this is coming from outside. This is a much better approach with shared channels than the other way, which is the guest user experience. And that is where you come up to your user and you flip over and you log on as a guest to a different organization. Now, I'm using the new teams in a couple of my clients here, and then I've got the old V1 teams here. And if you hover over the little slider, it says that Faster, Fresher Teams is ready for you to try. And yes, it is faster and fresher. It is lovely fast. The tenant switching, if you're a guest in other tenants, is lightning quick. And if you're in the middle of a phone call and you switch tenants to go look at another chat or another file, that stays up. So huge improvements from the V2 client to the legacy client. If you ever do want to switch back, they hide the switch back to get out of new teams under the 3 dots beside your profile. So it's not that they've taken it away, they just chose not to put the slider up here. They're hiding it down here. So you can switch back and forth rather rapidly as well. It will take a few seconds, but it's not, minutes or logging out or anything like that. So lots of benefits to the new client. And if something doesn't work for you in the new client, you can always go ahead, switch back to the old client. All right, client segue aside. So this is me as a guest invited into these teams. So I only see the general channels. And that's because I've got 2 shared channels here. As a guest in this team, I don't get to see shared channels. We're kind of mixing oil and water or crossing the streams or whatever. Bad things would happen, I think, if you allowed a user, Torren, as a guest to come into a channel and Torren to come into a shared channel. I would have 2 different personas, 2 different user accounts in that channel, and it would be horribly confusing as to which Torren was posting because they wouldn't be linked in any way. So the determination was made that as a guest, you just won't see shared channels at all. So the other thing going on here is under pilot things, I don't see that no racetrack allowed private channel because I've also not been added into this. I could be if we really wanted to. Guests can be allowed into private. Doesn't make a lot of sense though. Usually that private selection is targeted at blocking someone from seeing something. What we would do traditionally as a consulting company is we would set up a channel for a project for a customer. And when we wanted to have an internal discussion, hold of our draft documents, things like that, that we didn't necessarily want to have the customer see, we would set up that internal channel as a private channel and invite only internal users to it. We would then invite the customer as a guest into that channel. Customer would then be able to see everything that we want to share with them in the general channel or another channel specific to a project, but they wouldn't be able to see the things that we've put into either shared channels or private channels unless we've added them specifically to those. So lots of different things going on here, and I apologize for that being a a bit of a blur of different screens flashing up and down. It's hard to get away from that and still show the two different screens side by side. So done with tempting the demo gods here. I'm going to skip forward in my presentation and talk about shared channels and governance and controls around them. So when you're sharing something out from Microsoft land, regardless of what that is, whoever is doing the sharing is the person in charge. There's no exceptions around that. You, as the person having a document shared to you, you don't get control over that document. You get permissions to it to edit it if that other organization has granted those permissions, but you don't get to control what those permissions are. So you're kind of limited to removing yourself from that access, but you can't set your policies or your changes. Shared channels need something called B2B Connect, which is on your Entra ID setup. And it's a connector that allows 2 or more tenants to do shared channels, and will eventually do other apps and other levels of sharing between different tenants. This is kind of like a domain trust in the old Active Directory days, if you will. And it can be one way or it can be two way. So what's old is new again. So the sharing organization must permit sharing to either the target organization, or they can turn it on globally. And the target organization must permit their users to accept that access from the organization who is sharing that channel, or they can turn that on globally. So there's some granular controls here. I can set whether I want to share out to Gravity Union, and Gravity Union can choose whether they want to accept shares from Skybridge. There are additional licenses under the hood that can get you some better granularity there, down to particular users and all kinds of cool stuff. For the most part, though, it's that set this domain to allow inbound, set this domain to allow outbound, or just turn it on globally. Within Teams specifically, there's also a policy that allows you to allow or deny a user to participate in shared channels. So 2 different levels here that seem kind of redundant at start. Why would I set this up in Entra ID if I've also got to turn it on in Teams? And that's because that Entra ID connection that gets put into place is the more broad tenant to tenant, not just Teams. And then within Teams, we can also allow that functionality, and we can get down to the user level quite easily with that. So sounds scary, right? We'll turn it off. No, please don't do that. Do you also restrict OneDrive and SharePoint sharing, guest access, federated chats, phone calls, email, fax, staff golfing with people from other organizations? There comes a point where, yeah, it's brand new. Maybe we won't do it quite yet. Shared channels has been out for a year and a half or so at this point. So it's pretty well understood with what it does. The administration experience has gotten significantly better for turning all of this on. And there are an awful lot of controls that you can put in place to see what's going on and what's happening with your documents with folks who are accessing those documents. And you do not have those same levels of control if you allow email of documents, for example. So what you should do is look at your policies that you have now for sharing docs between your organization and other organizations. And if you don't have those policies, well, then what's guiding you to make a decision that, yeah, we'll turn it off, we won't do this? If you do have those policies, ask yourself, how is shared channels different from these other methods that have been around for longer? Why is it different? Let's have a look at those existing policies and update those to consider what shared channels and even guest access can bring us. And then remember to do the same for your user education. There's all kinds of functionality available in Teams, in SharePoint, for labels, for retention, for privacy of our documents that we can put in place, but they do still require the users to do that initial setting of, yeah, this is a confidential document. We don't want this sliding out to the other guys or out there in general. There's some ability to do automatic labeling of documents, but really it's down to the user. The user needs to be aware of what is it that I'm working with and how should this data be treated. And it also comes down to making it simple for the user. Don't give them a list of 27 different categories to classify a document as. Give them 3 or 4. This is red. This is internal only. This is yellow. This is only to limited people. Or this is green. Yeah, you know, it's the golf tournament invite or the golf tournament information. Anybody can see this type of thing. So what channel types should you use? Well, probably all of them. For a team and regular channels without guest access, that would be for your internal stuff. You don't need to lock it down with a private channel to restrict who can get in there, or with a shared channel to restrict who can get in there. If you've started adding guest access, you've now got that broader collaboration and some trust, and not the technology trust, but the people-to-people trust going on. You're inviting someone else into your tenant to do some collaboration with you. And you can introduce your private channels there. The example that I gave earlier is a consulting organization, to hide those bits from your guest users that you don't want to see that. You could even use that to hide bits from other internal users. If you are the payroll department, for example, you might still have a private channel under the payroll team that's restricted to only certain folks to be able to see. Maybe the executive payroll is handled by senior management, and you don't want everyone in the payroll department to be able to see that. Shared channels gives us a lot more flexibility to add our internal and external users in a more granular scope than team membership or filtered team membership. Our shared channel, we can invite an individual person, we can invite an entire internal team, we can invite a group, lots of different ways of inviting those people in. So when would we use guest access instead of shared channels? Really, the big one in my mind is apps. There are a lot of apps out there that are based on Office 365 groups or M365 groups, and shared channels don't use those groups. They use a substrate group similar to what SharePoint would use if you created different permission levels within SharePoint. Planner is the big one here. If you've got Planner in a channel right now for project management, shared channels just won't do Planner. Someone coming in over a shared channel wouldn't be able to take advantage of any of that. So you're going to need to use guest access to make that happen still. Another reason would be if you are the size of Microsoft and you want to have your customers and partners participate in Teams in your organization so that you get to control everything. The way to do that with the least amount of effort on your part is currently guest access. There's another pretty good blocker here for shared channels at this point, and that is if you need to invite a user who doesn't have a Microsoft 365 account. So they've got, they call it a Microsoft account, but it's just, you know, your torren@gmail.com live account or your outlook.com account. So it's not M365, it's not Teams, and we need to get them in. We can do that with guest access, because guest access creates a guest account in your Entra ID. Shared channel is a trust of the user in the other organization's directory. So the second part of this is what I like to call layer 8 of the OSI model, is policy and politics. So if your organization isn't yet ready, with little bunny rabbit ears around ready, or is still waiting for everyone else to go first, or the other org isn't yet ready or is still waiting for everyone else to go first, You need both parties to agree to set up the shared channel infrastructure and to allow channel sharing between your organizations. If there's a blocker there, or someone doesn't want to allow this, okay, you're back to the guest access method. So we've also got some scope items that I talked about. So guest access, you can't have a guest come in and see shared channels, and you can block your guests with private channels. Shared channels, though, are only sharing a channel. So if you use guest access and you have a team with a number of different channels that you want the person to have access to, let's say Miguel has a team with 30 different channels that he wants me to be able to come into. Guest access, click, adds Torren one time, and I'm in, I can see all of those. If we're doing shared channels, he's got to click through all 30 of those channels to invite me into those. It'll be a much better experience for me once it's set up, because it just shows up in my teams and my channels list on the left of my client, but it's going to be a lot more work to get set up. All right, what questions does everyone have? What can I bring you back and show you here?
Thanks, Torren. Appreciate your great topics to present. I have 2 questions in the chat, which I can read out to you. The first one is from Rain Furley. Sorry for my pronunciation. Understand that the way the shared channels handle the permissions is by creating a separate SharePoint site for each shared channel. Does that create any concern for SharePoint sprawl?
Yeah, that's a fantastic one. And I remember being in some early NDA sessions around private channels, because they use the same kind of idea under the hood. And SharePoint folks were really concerned about the possibility for sprawl and manageability, and just, am I going to hit limits that's going to break things for me? The answer on are you going to hit limits that's going to break anything is no. Microsoft is very aware of how many things are being spun up in the substrate under SharePoint, under Exchange, to support these. The answer about manageability and isn't just going to be too many things to do is also a no, because you shouldn't need to go in and do anything directly through SharePoint with any of these channels or any of these substrate groups that are set up. You can, if you have the permissions, if you go in through SharePoint, you can add and change people. Please don't, though. You're probably going to break an awful lot of things when you click something on Teams to add someone to a channel or to a team, or change any particular setting. It's not just that one setting in SharePoint that happens. There's other settings and metadata that happen as that click and that assignment. So you can go into SharePoint, you might be able to change some things, and it looks good, but you've missed that other bit of substrate that's maybe under the hood in Exchange somewhere that hasn't been changed.
Excellent. Thanks, Torren.
That's a good tip. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Torren. So we have another question from Cameron, and it's about, have you encountered many companies? Sorry. The new team is nice, except it appears to have dropped one of notify when available in the chat. So that's great. Another question. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a
question. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say there's a number of things in the V2 of Teams that aren't there yet, and you go looking for them, and they're just, it's not that they're moved, it's that they haven't been implemented yet. The one that I'm really waiting for is when I open a document in Teams, say a spreadsheet, I want it to open in my desktop Excel, not in Teams, not in a web browser, and that's not there yet. I can do it by opening in the web experience and then clicking open in the desktop app, and I get there. But it's a couple of extra clicks right now. It is on their list of things to remedy.
Thank you, Torren. That's good to know, because I thought they just decided to drop the feature. So I will be patient, and thank you for that.
Great, thank you. And the next question we have from Brad is, have you encountered many companies that are ready to use B2B DC yet? I have not, though we have asked. So are we stuck with B2B collaboration?
Yeah, this is that last slide and what I was getting at, the layer 8 is we're not ready yet, and we're going to wait for everyone else to go first and see what's wrong with it and what breaks and things like that. We are definitely starting to see people moving past that and willing to do the shared channel experience. I think when we'll see a huge shift here will be once there's some under the hood rewrites that let the remainder of those apps work in the shared channel experience. And they're also working on what else can be done around that whole setup that makes it easier. You know, there's got to be a workflow there so that Miguel can try and share a channel with me, and our respective admins can get pop-ups in their workflow that says, hey, someone's trying to set up a shared channel between these two organizations. Do you want to allow this? Yes, no, tell me more kind of thing. Click on the tell me more and go to a Microsoft Learn site and, you know, get the 45-second overview of what it is that your users are trying to do. Right now, it's a bit of a pain to go in and set everything up. And that seems to be the biggest one. Is you've got your Teams people who are like, yeah, we want to turn this on. And then you've got Entra ID and security people who are like, yeah, no, we don't. There's no need to do this. So there's always that, the different silos. And I think we're getting there.
Excellent. Thanks, Torren. The last question I have in the channel is regarding when should we create a team and when should we create a channel? What is the recommendation for a small software development agency like 40 people or multiple projects where all employees can access all projects?
That's a fantastic one. So there's a couple of different factors here where I would pick a team with 1 or 2 channels versus kind of one team with a dozen channels. And really it comes down to what are the rest of the access requirements, and then what are the lifecycle requirements. So the rest of the access requirements are who's coming in as a third-party vendor to work with us, who's coming in from a customer perspective to work with us. If we're allowing our customers in via guest access, then we would need to have one team for each one of those customers that we're dealing with, or each one of those projects that we're dealing with for those customers. Otherwise, we'd have to go into each individual channel, have them set up as private channels, and administering who gets access would be not fun at all. The other one there would be around the life cycle and the archiving. So you're working on a project and it's done. How long do you want it to stay around before it gets packaged up and stuffed into archive lands? How long do you want to be able to retrieve it? And does having all of those under one team give you a different experience than having each project or a couple of projects under individual teams? Right, there's a different structure right now. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways of doing that for sure. When you're smaller, if you don't have that external access requirement, I would say absolutely you could go ahead and you could have a team specifically for those projects.
Excellent. Thanks, Torren. That was great. There's no more question in the chat. I will pass it on to yourself.
I have one thing to say, Mustafa.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
So basically we plan to invite people who are interested to speak at upcoming events. So we will put the call for a speaker form in Meetup and also the social media, and you can send us your topic and your information through that. So we will plan this for the upcoming events. We plan to host this as a regular meeting every month. So it would be great if you are interested, fill out the call for a speaker forms for us.
Thanks, Arash. That's a great point. Yeah, we're planning to organize that to have regular sessions, either in person or like online events. So that's something that we are working on. Hopefully, start in January. We try to have sessions on a monthly basis. Thank you.
Right.
Well said, my
There's also
friend.
one notice on the chat, so Miguel. It's about the job posting. There's a UBC job opening, and UBC is looking for a senior leadership team role to be filled, product manager for the M365 rollout plans, which was posted on the UBC. So if anyone interested, you can also
That
look it.
that's a good one. To be honest,
Great.
I worked at UBC for maybe a year. Great benefits for sure. Great environment. Everyone's very open, and because it's an academic environment, like people like to try new things, which is great. I think maybe this one is a hybrid role, so I'm not sure how many days a week you need to be at Point Grey campus. So if you live near Point Grey, that's awesome. But if you live in Coquitlam, yeah, good luck with that.
I guess
Yeah,
that's a question for Gordon if he has more information. Other than that, you can check the website and UBC.
for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending today. I think we're hoping next month we can make it work. So we'll keep you guys posted, and yeah, feel free to reach out. We tend to look at Twitter and the Meetup message board more often. But of course, if you want to reach out via email, you can do so at contactus@bano.com, or reach out to Miguel or Mostafa or Arash at bano365.com as well. Those are our emails. Again, well, thank you so much for attending today. Stay safe and have a great weekend.
See you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Miguel.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Arash.
Thank you so
And
much,
thanks,
everyone.
Torren.
Bye now.